Hello and welcome. I am your host for the final cut. Now, in this episode, we are diving into episode 3 of Chucky, the television series. Now, as I said before in the previous two reviews, that I've been on board with this so far. I feel like these two episodes that we've gotten prior to this episode have been pretty damn good. I feel like they've struck in a good balance between the horror stuff, between the self awareness, the kind of humor about it. Everything that Don Mancini has done so far has always been a variation in quality. He's always done something pretty good, like Brother Chucky, pretty bad like Seed, pretty good with Curse, pretty bad with Cult. And I've been happy to say, though, thus far that the show has found that right balance. And now with episode 3, I'm going to have to say that so far I think this is the weakest episode, but it's not to say it's an especially bad episode. It's definitely a bit more slower paced than the previous two episodes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I felt like there were some like slight dips in quality when it comes to certain aspects. One of them being, I would say, the effects of Chucky. I would say that they showed their hand a bit as far as their production quality and as far as handling the puppeteering. Like there's one shot in this episode where Chucky's walking and his feet just don't look right. It's just like kind of up and down. It does look a bit fake, so that kind of takes out that immersion a bit. And also because each episode has basically had one solid kill so far, and in this one he takes out one of the younger characters at the top of a staircase. But I would say, though, as far as the way that they shot it, didn't look that great. They kind of held on the one shot where he's just stabbing him repeatedly, and it doesn't quite look right. It just looks like he's irritatingly poking this kid, and it's just like, nah, you could have done better. You could have just done like a close-up shot of Chucky, him just doing like the slash motion, cut to the boy's face. I mean, we've seen that in the series before, but here they just didn't really utilize their camera work very well, and so it just kind of looks a bit iffy. As far as like a later attack scene on one of the characters, it kind of harkens back to like a Child's Play 2 where you got the feet kicking and stuff. He's on top of them and just trying to attack them. And so that's pretty good. And there's the whole big like where a blaze starts to occur. You have the shot we've seen in some of the promotional images and stuff where it's going up behind him and he's just like laughing maniacally and just going crazy. Like that was actually a pretty effective shot. But also going into some of the writing. And so with that, this episode, it started off with Jake, where it left off with the previous episode where they're talking in the bedroom and him just kind of getting into Jake's head a bit more, just trying to push him into the idea of actually harming someone else, particularly Lexi in this situation. And that is all actually well and good. It's just really good character growth and development and the dynamic between these two and seeing where we're gonna take Jake. Like, is he actually gonna pull the trigger on this, so to speak? Like, can he actually do it? And he actually comes close at one point in time where we assume it's Lexi jogging about, because in an earlier scene where Jake is talking to the one teacher and she's talking to him about be like, oh, basically, if you need anything, just come to me, we can talk or whatever. And his phone just keeps going off with notifications, and it's basically like a GPS tracker, I guess, to follow Lexi. Which one thing that kind of confused me, I don't know if I would need to go back and just look and see if I missed something, but we're assuming it's actually tracking Lexi's path because she's like, it's her jogging along this path, and he has a knife and he starts following her and he comes very close to actually doing the deed, but then you realize that it's actually his cousin. He's just like, dude, well, like, what the hell are you doing and shit. And so with that, I'm not really sure if it was meant to track her like some sort of jogging like Fitbit thing, like if he had hacked into it or something earlier. And it was meant to be her, but it just happened to be his cousin. And we see in a scene after that where they're both wearing like identical clothing, and it's kind of odd. And I'm like, it's not like it's her sweater that he borrowed, but they're wearing identical clothing, and but he's chasing after her, but he's like tracking her, but it happens to be him. I don't really know. I don't know if I missed something there, but just how they execute that in the context of how it was meant to be was a bit confusing. So, but I mean, I don't know. And there's a scene later on, which is pretty interesting. But again, I feel like that's where some of the writing in this episode is a bit off. Where Lexi goes to Jake, basically trying to apologize, but not really. In the end, she's just really kind of asking for a favor, like, oh, can my little sister have Chucky? She's really just fascinated with him and all this. And he's like, no. Because this is where Jake is looking at a bunch of like gardening equipment and tools in the garage and stuff. He has one in his hand, he hides it behind his back, like that whole thing. And it's just like, a bit gimmicky, but, it is what it is. And where where you feel like this could be a moment where you can actually see a little bit more humanity in the character of Lexi, but at the same time they kind of push her into being a bit more almost cartoony, though, as far as her nature. And so it comes across as very, very odd, in a sense. And I don't know, it just seemed like it was a step too far with the character, as far as, like I said, just like her actual humanity. It's like, yeah, she did a messed up thing dressing up as Jake's dad and all that stuff at the party, but that is definitely something like some really just non-sensitive kids would do. But in this, it just felt particularly a bit just kind of off. And so later on, where Jake actually does go back to her, because that's the plan, is like, Chucky's like, fine, if you're not going to do this, I'm going to take care of this, take me to her, and just let me do a thing. And so he does that, and she's like, oh, thank you, that was very nice, but that doesn't make us friends or anything. And so just like kind of like that dynamic was a bit wishy-washy, I guess. And it just kind of, they just could have probably done a little bit more of a touch-up on the writing as far as that, because it kind of leaves you just like, well, where is this character then? Like, how far is she willing to be like that much of like a villain, in a sense, and because they do have a later scene where she's actually like singing a song to her sister, to put her to bed, because she's having like this little silent disco party where they have the headphones on, listening to music. And it's just like, I don't know, because that in context, I can see what they're trying to do. Like, yeah, she's the bully character, but they're trying to show, her human side a bit more. But the earlier stuff just feel like kind of contradicts everything, and it just makes it a little bit more odd. But that's just me. I don't know. I just felt like that could have been done a little bit better. But all in all, that's basically a lot of the episode, and where you have the kid that's doing the podcast that Jake is into, and he has a moment where he's talking to Jake. You think it's sincere, but you realize that he's actually recording him, and he's listening to it in his room and stuff. His mom comes in and hears it, interrupts him, and so it leaves you wondering, where are they going with that then? Is he actually doing that for sincere purposes to kind of help Jake, to try to understand him, or is he doing that in a more underlying way that's not meant to help him? I would assume it's more the former, that he's actually trying to help Jake, but we don't really know how or why, like what his method is to this. Because so far he does seem like a rather sincere character. It's just this episode kind of leaves a lot of questions as far as like intent of certain aspects. But yeah, I feel like, honestly, for me personally, the mom character, the detective, she's not really doing it for me, to be honest. I feel like she's kind of like flat in her delivery. She just seems a little bit just, I don't know. She just I don't feel like she's just really. She's not really hitting for me as most of the other cast is, but that's not really a huge deal. But I don't know, just to me, a bit iffy for me personally. But all in all, it's still a solid episode. It still has me feeling intrigued as to where they're gonna go with all this, as well as a scene where they had a little parent-teacher thing, Lexi's parents and Jake's aunt and uncle, trying to understand where these kids are, as far as them bullying each other and stuff. And that's when they come to the realization that Lexi dressed up as Jake's dad. And it's like, that was an interesting little scene, just to kind of get that reaction from his brother and the parents and stuff. And so that was a pretty decent little moment. But again, it just felt like a solid enough episode, but it definitely had a few cracks in it. And I'm hoping that they reconfigure that by the next episode, and hopefully things are a bit tightened up for at least for me personally. But I mean, let me know what you think of this episode. We're coming up on the next one in a few days. And so we'll just see where everything goes from there. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. And we will speak to you next time. Bye for now.